All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of R&D. I am Jerome Conover. This is Justin Rogers. We couldn't be joined by Sam Gomez today, but we will go on in his stead. First thing we will be talking about is Stranger Things Season 2.
Need a different song, copyright.
Cue the half-assed version of the theme song for us or something. Well, I guess the first thing that we should get into with the new season is where we find all of the characters now in comparison to where they were in the last season. So we find them in the arcade playing Dragon Slayer.
Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair?
Yeah.
You're right.
Dragon's Lair.
See, we can't even get our references correctly here.
Don Bluth game.
Well, you've done your nerd history bit for the day.
That's some history. Don Bluth, creator of the Fievel series.
Yeah, and your segment is done. Yeah, well, we find sort of the other characters fragmented. Like it kind of like tried to go back to their lives of being separate, you know what I mean? Almost sort of pretending that nothing happened. But maybe that's because they have to pretend that nothing happened.
Yeah, the government told them to. It's like, don't discuss anything. Live your life. Be normal.
Yeah. So Hopper's gone from being One Punch Cop to Super Dad. He's our side child.
Yeah, because no one knows that he is secretly hiding a child in the woods, in a cabin in the woods.
Which could look really bad. Nancy is still dating Steve.
And not eating cheeseburgers. Cut that out.
Yeah.
That'll be a Patreon outtake. You gotta pay to see that. John still being John.
Jonathan, yeah, still being kind of weird. A bit of a loner.
But he knows who he is, and he's just doing his thing. Everyone wants to try to, do whatever they're doing and, pretend things. And he's just like, nope, I'm just gonna take photos of people, go home, listen to The Clash.
Go on being a stalker.
And then hang out with his best friend who's his brother. He just wanted his brother back and he got him. Winona Ryder hanging out with Rudy. Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah.
Or
which was a great
Goonies.
reveal. Yeah, that was amazing to see Sean Astin.
Dustin's character is, he's a little older. His teeth are finally in,
grown.
And he's still the whippersnapper chunk character of the series, where he's the guy who's swearing the most. You have Lucas, he's trying not to be Winston.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like him and there's a lot of focus on him and Dustin in the season where there's kind of this bromance thing going on between them. They're kind of getting to that age where they're interested in girls, so that brings up all the stuff with Maxine.
Yeah, well, because Mike's story was pretty much the first season. He was trying to find his buddy, and then also he had 11, and then once he fell in love with 11, and 11's gone. So he's now being kind of like Pouty McGee.
Yeah.
But,
emo Mike, which was their own term.
Super emo Mike. But what's cool is the season gave a lot more character development for everybody else. And thankfully it was kind of more of a real time.
Especially those characters.
Yeah, it was a real time season. They're like, these kids are growing. So it takes place almost a year later. And everyone's just trying to, live their life. And then you have the two new characters who show up. Mad Max and her gay brother.
Yeah, I'm still pretty convinced that character is homosexual. Billy. He's just covering it up.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they played it quite well because there's certain sites who don't go into, that aspect, and it's I just feel it was the overly masculine, machismo-ness. He's the Val Kilmer to Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
I would have loved, the scene where they're in the shower and he does that weird bite thing. Where it's just they're just so close, and it's dude, just make out, please.
Yeah, I don't know if that scene needed to be any longer than it was.
He had the George Michael earring, the feathered mullet, the worst look for a white person ever. He had the so fine tan, but I don't know if that's because he's Australian in real life. It's the dude who played the Red Power Ranger in the new.
Right.
Power Rangers.
He looked familiar, and it wasn't until you said that I was like, oh, yeah, okay, that's what that is.
Yeah. he's weirdly racist, and they don't go into that at all. It's
Yeah.
like, don't hang out with that black kid.
The
It's
guy,
like,
the guy from California is racist, but not the people from a small town in
Yeah,
Indiana.
yeah.
I found that a little odd. Yeah, but I mean, who knows? Sometimes that kind of racism is a result of an experience, a personal experience. So maybe something happened to him.
I guess-
it's just a weird turn for the writing.
did they ever say what part of California, or they just said California?
No, but I think it's sort of. I mean,
Probably
they
Southern
never.
California?
They never specifically say it, but I'm assuming Southern California. So that gets us into talking about the new characters, which is obviously Maxine and
Billy.
Yeah, Billy is also Bob,
And Bob.
played by Sean Astin.
And then there's the doctor.
Oh, played by Paul Reiser,
Yep.
who I was ecstatic to see. And that was so funny because I explained to Sam, I was like, oh, that's Paul Reiser. And he was like, who? And I was like, you remember the guy, Burke, from the Aliens movie and Aliens 2? And he was like, no way. Like, completely blown away that it was the same person.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's good to see him still doing some work.
Yeah, I mean, he had all that Mad About You money. It must have just been running out. It was that sitcom that he did with Helen Hunt. years
I
ago.
know.
And, I mean, hey, man, everybody's got to eat. Especially you, Nancy.
Yeah. I just didn't.
Sorry,
I don't like it.
I can't.
In terms of Paul Reiser, I just didn't want to assume that the guy didn't have anything going on. You know, I feel like that's kind of mean to just assume that some actors, you know, at the bottom of their barrel in terms of money, so they look for something. else.
I don't think doing season 2 of Stranger Things was like, you know, being at the bottom of the barrel. Like the Duffer
This is
Brothers,
true.
the Duffer Brothers specifically wanted Paul Reiser
Really?
for it because they were like, all right, this season, because it's the second, you know, it's the second series
It
or
is
season.
the homage to Aliens.
You know,
too.
there was a bunch of homages to Aliens. So like, and that was kind of like one of them. But what was cool was that, you know, because everyone's like, oh, it's Burke, he's gonna turn on him, and also because he works for the company.
That gets on the point that I was like, it was very apparent to me. There was a lot of things that you expected watching the season that actually didn't end up happening. So it's kind of like, I don't know if that was just coincidence or it was good writing of like, well, let's fool you into thinking you're going to see something that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, you know, obviously him being a bad guy and being a scumbag, and he isn't. I also
Thought Bob was gonna be
thought,
bad.
yeah, I thought Bob was going to be one of the Hawkins Labs employees, and he was just there to spy on them, but that didn't happen. And again, we were touching on Billy's character. I also thought that he was secretly hiding this gay thing for Steve Harrington, like all along, and that was gonna come up at the end, but it never did.
Well, yeah, like he wanted to be, you know, big man on campus, the big swinging dick, and like, you know, because he comes in and it's kind of like Prison Rules. What's the first thing you do? You find like the biggest, baddest, most popular person, and you take him down a notch.
Yeah.
And so they pretty much did it, and like out of nowhere, also he started hanging out with whatever his douchey friend was from the first season. That like picked on him when he was already like hurt.
Yeah, we didn't see him until like the second episode though. But I was
Yeah.
kind of wondering like, okay, what happened to that guy? And he just sort of disappeared. But
Yeah,
that
like
was
he was in the party scene and also at the gym, not in the super steamy shower scene though.
no, he was there. That was him.
He was in the shower
Yeah,
scene?
he was the guy who leaned in and told him like, "Oh, your girlfriend's running off with Jonathan Byers. What are you gonna do about it?" That was him.
Oh, but I mean, like I thought he left after when it was just, you know, Billy and
He did. Like he left in
And
the scene.
Steve.
There was two.
They were
two of
there
them.
for a second by themselves.
yeah,
It's just a ghost, disembodied voice.
yeah. Steve and his fantastic hair. That it's a secret how he gets his hair so fantastic.
Yeah, but it's like I think the character development for Steve is really like the best part of this season, is because he goes from being this really douchey guy to sort of becoming part of the group and becoming a good guy, and you learn more about him. And sort of his vulnerability too. Him sort of like becoming Dustin's mentor is
Oh,
really
dude.
cool to see in the show. I thought those were some of the best scenes of the two of them.
Their storylines was the best.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, sure, Hopper and Eleven, you know, the whole like father-daughter kind of relationship was pretty good. But yeah, dude, Steve and Dustin were by far like my favorite. And just the way Dustin talks to everybody, just is like, who is this kid? And why is he talking to me like that? And what I really liked about the series,
It's funny because Dustin's that kid. You know, when you're growing up, you have that one friend who mouths off to their mom.
yeah,
He was that. He was that
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Shut up, Mom!
And like it's kind of like it's weird. Like we got to see everyone else's family life other than Mike and Will.
Yeah.
So it was cool. You got to see Dustin's mom,
Luke's sister, and his parents.
parents.
The little girl that plays his sister is amazing.
Oh, she was great. Shut up. What?
Shut your mouth. Yeah. That girl was particularly interesting to me because it reminded me of certain family members that I have on my dad's side of the family. It was just like, this girl's so familiar.
Yeah, like, but it was cool, kind of like going back more and more into like the family-esque. So like you have, and the slight kind of like political things going on.
Yeah,
like,
all the billboards
the
for the Reagan
and
yeah.
It was pretty good. And you could.
Mike's dad's a complete tool. He was telling the suits. He was like, "Oh well, everybody in this house is Republican. We're patriots. Yeah,
we're good Americans."
Yeah, but dude, it's like, dude, shut up.
He's such a Jerry. Like he's such a Jerry, and like as you said when we were talking about this earlier, he's a little worse than a Jerry, because I think like Jerry. Even though he's a scumbag, Jerry from Rick and Morty, everybody.
Yeah, for anybody.
Sorry. Like he still, I think he still has some redeeming qualities. Even
he does.
Though Jerry sucks.
Okay, we're getting into Rick and Morty.
Sucks.
Yeah,
though.
we're getting into Rick and Morty. Like Jerry. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And Dustin when Dustin rips into him, like.
Yeah, I forgot about that scene. He's just like, "You're useless, dude."
He's like, "God, son of a bitch, you're so useless."
I completely forgot about that scene until you said something. Yeah, he's just like, "Dude, you're useless."
Where's Mike? I don't know, honey. Where's Mike? He's at Lucas or he's at the buyer's residence. All right, shit. Where's Nancy? What makes you think I know where my children are at? Where's Nancy? At Allison's. Like, I've had friends' parents like that.
Yeah.
And I've had.
Well, those are those parents that just give up on being parents. They're just like, I don't have any control over what happens anymore. I don't care.
Yeah, they're just there because like they're just going through like the motions. You can tell that they're just there to be like the nuclear family.
Here's the difference between him and Jerry, though, is that Jerry sees his life being ruined, like falling apart, and throughout the show like makes an effort to try and piece it back together and to fix it. This guy is like either doesn't know his life is falling apart, because it is, and it does nothing, like just doesn't care, you know what I mean? As long as he's got his day job, he's whatever. He's got his recliner and his TV, he's cool. So yeah, in a way I think he's worse than Jerry,
other than Lucas's family,
which again was an interesting, I mean, I don't mean to make things racial, but I did find an interesting contrast, is that all of the other children's families, all of the white kids were actually broken families, and Lucas's family was not. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether that's just like they just wrote it that way, or was a conscious effort not to seem, stereotypical to do that. But I sort of appreciated that they did that. It's like, okay, that was cool that they had written those characters that way, because that does happen. Like there are families like that, and yeah.
Yeah, and it was very interesting, and there were great additions.
It sounds like the Venkman thing too.
Oh, the Venkman? Okay, so yeah, so in one of the episodes is the Halloween thing, and that starts off the trailer where they're all dressed up as Ghostbusters, except for no one wanted to be Winston, and I liked it, and I was bummed about that as well, because I like Winston, and I defend Winston a lot. And like one of my friends, who I grew up with, who's black, and he loves the the Ghostbusters stuff. He's a huge Winston supporter, and he was important to Ghostbusters because he was the straight man.
Yes.
In that whole thing, like you got these weird, crazy people.
That's what I said. Is like I always liked Winston's character because the other characters were so weird, and it was just like, it's cool to have this one guy who's just like, you guys are crazy. Like I don't understand any of this.
Or
he's more like you almost feel like he's the audience watching the others. Like you're watching what happens through him. But I guess the kids, identified with these guys as nerds,
right?
As scientists, and they thought that was more interesting.
And well, also because the thing is like, as they've pointed out, Winston shows up like halfway through the movie. Like he's not.
He wasn't an original member of the team. Right?
He's not part of the team really until like the end.
And he wasn't a scientist. That was his other point.
And you know what? you do you, Lucas. You want to strive to be, you know, a scientist type. Like,
yeah, again, it's like I asked that question, is like, was that an intentional thing? Like, they got into the writing room, they said, okay, who's who, and then going, oh well, Lucas is Winston was too easy, and they were like,
Yeah.
we don't want to do that because we don't want to look like we're just making assumptions. So they had this. It's almost like,
and they had the conversation
yeah,
within it.
yeah, it's almost like they made the characters have the conversation they were having as they wrote the scene.
Yeah, and that's what I just love about this dialogue. You know, like these kids are believable at those ages because they are those ages, and like they say things that I would have said at that age. They're what, 8th grade now, 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah, they're in middle
something
school.
like that.
Yeah.
Because I think the next year they're gonna be in high school.
Yeah, they're freshmen.
But yeah, like it just seemed like these, and that's kind of like the Stephen King and the Spielberg, you know, influences, where like they're kid actors in those things, and those characters are believable. They're not just like, you know, a 40-year-old wrote this dialogue. You know, like,
Yeah.
I think this is what a,
yeah,
you know,
we're hearing a bunch of kids
button-
reciting what a 40-year-old scriptwriter was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's those are some of the things that I appreciated. You know, the show had tons of references, you know, and Easter eggs.
You're getting into my next talking
Okay.
point, which is all the homage and the various things. Obviously, one of the biggest overriding themes is Aliens 2, but there was a lot more in there too. Jurassic Park references, I felt.
See, I don't see that, but go on.
They almost had the Nedry guy. Like, there was the overweight dude on the computer who didn't want to be there. There was the scene of them rebooting the computers, which was also like Samuel L. Jackson's character in Jurassic Park the first time, where all the dinosaurs, the demi-dogs, break loose. And then the scene where one of the demi-dogs is on top of the bus, and you see Maxine's face through the window, and she screams, is a very sort of Jurassic Park-esque thing to me. Indiana Jones was another one of the references. The whole scene where Jonathan and Nancy are pacing back and forth talking to each other before they go out is from the Temple of Doom.
Okay.
Where
To be honest, I've only seen that movie like once or
yeah,
twice, so I
there's
don't
this
have.
there's this scene where Harrison Ford and unfortunately I can't remember the actress's name, is they're both walking around in their hotel rooms sort of complaining about each other before they finally walk out into the hallway, and then you know, their whole romance sort of begins. So that was there.
You know, there's the Evil Dead references with the Cabin in the Woods, and also when Dustin, those quick cuts of Dustin getting on the, you know, getting the bologna meat and getting on the
Well,
the
then
hockey gear.
that was kind of like E.T. though too, but yeah.
The quick cuts of it was very Sam Raimi.
Okay,
And
I see
Evil
that.
Dead of him like doing that and getting ready. Sorry, you ate my cat.
I'm gonna have to put you down.
You know, definitely. You know, once they get into the tunnels, you know, it's a reference to the game Dig Dug that they're all trying to play, and they're upset that Mad Max, obviously that's a reference to Road Warrior and Mad Max. That, you know, those were some of the games that came out in 1984 that everyone played, was Dragon's Lair and Dig Dug.
Yeah.
You know, because they took things pretty different and crazy, and both those were there for specific reasons to kind of like foreshadow things to happen. Like Dustin originally wanted to, like, you know, hook up with Maxine, but because he lost the game.
Yeah, there was a
in
reference to their romance in the
Yeah.
in the Dragon's Lair game.
in Dragon's Lair, and then, you know, and then Lucas he's like, well, now she's mine, and
That was
behold,
foreshadowing.
Yeah.
There's also some homage to, I think, in my opinion, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When Will's character becomes injured by the Mind Flayer, he sort of lays on the ground convulsing at this high-pitched sort of sound coming out of his throat. That doesn't sound very human. That was something from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the 80s version too, not the older ones from the 60s or 70s. I can't remember, honestly, off the top of my head. But I thought those were interesting nods. I'm trying to think if there are any more.
I almost want to say that kind of
I think we're
a thing like reference of when, but also could be an Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You know, when they take Will to the hospital, and you know, they're talking to him, and he looks at Bob and he's like, "Who are you? Are you a doctor?"
Yeah.
And then they start asking him all these other questions.
Yeah.
You know, Then the whole like they have the tentacle and they start burning it. I feel like that was, an homage to the thing, to Carpenter's thing.
The thing, yeah. We're skipping over the whole the sort of the other side of the references, the more romantic films.
Well, in the Halloween party, there's tons of costume references. Like Steve and Nancy, they're Tom Cruise and what's her face from Risky Business.
Oh, okay.
So that's even like kind of being again like Steve is Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Breakfast Club is the reference I was looking for. Now I don't know if there was anything directly referencing Breakfast Club, but some of the costumes and some of the romance things that were going on throughout the show were sort of reminiscent of that era of films as well.
Yeah, there was some John Hughes references.
Yeah, there you go. That's the name I was looking for.
Yeah, there's just so many you can like list. Like
I know. But that was what was fun
friends,
about the show.
Yeah, and on all my friends' pages, like every time they're watching it, they're like, okay, I just saw this, and this. That's kind of one of the fun things about that show.
I felt like Eleven's makeup and hair from the 7th episode where she goes to
when she becomes Billy Badass.
Yeah, I thought that was sort of in reference to The Crow, but I could be wrong. Like I felt like the high makeup was sort of in that direction.
And again, that's more 90s. So like everything about Stranger Things is always, in my opinion, and from I believe what I've read, everything's going to be an 80s reference. And so there's a scene where she's watching the trailer
for a Terminator.
Yeah, commercial for a Terminator, and I think that's kind of, they're trying to go into that 80s kind of like punk thing, but also because she shows up, especially when she comes back in.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder now if when she walks in the
Terminator.
door in the slow motion, whether that was a Terminator reference.
Yeah. Do we want to discuss what we liked and what we didn't like about the second season?
I think, honestly, there was nothing bad about this. Like, there were no complaints for me. There's nothing I can point out and go. And that the first season was like that too. Like they basically delivered on everything that you wanted to see. So you know what I mean? Like I just spent this entire 45 minutes talking about everything that was great about the show. I want to say that the Maxine character I thought was great. Like every scene with her was just like, okay, this is cool. Like we kind of want to get to know her more. So that was fantastic.
So you appreciated that it went from 8 episodes to 9 episodes? That it had like an extra episode to go into certain storylines?
I didn't even notice.
Oh.
See, my problem is that I'm one of those people that will binge watch it straight. Like I can't stop, and I literally did that. Like we started at Thursday night midnight, and I watched it all the way up until like 7 in the morning until I was done with the entire thing. So the episode count to me is like, I don't care. I'm too fixated on the story.
Okay.
But the last thing I guess is like, where do we think that they're gonna go next?
Well, for me, what I did not like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was episode 7. I thought it was a weird.
It was a bit of a sidestep for me.
It was a weird sidestep. It was. I guess it was cool for 11 to try to find her mom and do all of this and that. But then, like, really, once she started hanging out with the
punks,
the Philly punks,
I think that was Chicago.
No, it's Philadelphia.
Is it?
Because at the beginning of the first episode, it shows Philadelphia. Or unless they do go to Chicago, but
because I think they showed. I don't know what the name of that tower is, but there's this one very large black tower in Chicago, and I thought that was what they showed, but I could be wrong.
I just figured it was all Philadelphia because again, the first time we see 8 and the punks, it's in Philadelphia. When they're driving around and she shows her specific power. Like that being kind of like her weird like Luke Skywalker Dagobah thing, and like 8 is her Yoda. Trying to hone on her powers and this and that was kind of interesting, but the other punks I didn't care about. It seemed like it was a weird like backdoor pilot for like, all right, we did Stranger Things, and then we got these people.
It was almost like they were trying to set up a spin-off. I mean, when they talked about it, they said that it was just cool for them to explore other textures to shoot, but it did feel like, okay, this is kind of like a different show that you could do completely separate of this.
Yeah, and like you could have almost had taken that episode out and the whole series would have been kind of fun, and like pulled like the more important aspects of that episode and like put them into other episodes. Now, it wasn't as distracting as say the second half of Luke Cage, where, you know, dude's gone for like 4 episodes, like in the South, and then like comes back and fights Copperhead. But you know, at least it wasn't that bad. And then like rewatching it again, you know, the episode to me again wasn't as bad, but it was to me that was the weakest episode of
but
the
that
second
episode
season.
does raise a few questions. One, are there more children, right? Because obviously they're 11 and 8.
Yeah.
And also, is Dr. Brenner actually dead? Like, will we see that coming back? Oh, and a third question is what's happening to Elle dangerous to her? Like, is she shortening her life by using her powers is another question, because Brenner's message to her is that you've got this problem growing inside you and it's going to continue to fester until it kills you. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I mean, I hope. So now we can go into what you were discussing. Like, what are our hopes for the 3rd season? So, like, I hope Brenner does come back, because it is teased that he is alive from that other guy with the googly eyes, and then hopefully there is
the Harvey Weinstein looking guy.
Oof.
He's probably like, no, I don't look like it.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, I feel like a jerk now.
So I hope they introduce at least 2 more
children.
2 more children. One that's going to kind of be, you know, be part of like the superhero team, but then there's one that Brenner has, and like Brenner, you know, and then he's gonna kind of be like the weird, and this is when they can possibly go into like Akira references, which I thought Will was gonna be. I thought Will was gonna turn into like the Tetsuo.
Yeah, he was gonna be the bad, and sort of upside down, the Netherwalker, I guess is another term that they can call it.
So at least I kind of got like, you know, the Elle being all like, she was lifting herself up with her power, and I was like, yes, do it.
Do it.
Yeah, do it.
The Emperor.
So yeah, I mean, like, I'm super stoked for the 3rd season, and like it's gonna, you know, the Duffer Brothers have said, like, it's already signed on for the 3rd season.
Of course.
The Duffer Brothers said that they have stories up to 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah,
possibly.
I was actually blown away to hear that they were aiming for 4 and beyond.
And just the great thing about Netflix is they know that the show works. Netflix isn't going to come and be like, we have some notes.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, nope, you stay back and just let us make you money.
So,
especially with them losing all the Disney and Marvel stuff. Like, they better, and
they're gonna have to start leaning on their originals a bit more.
And now that they stopped production on House of Cards for other things, but
it's a crazy time right now. All right, things that I want to see going forward. One, I'm kind of hoping that in the next season, Will isn't in so much peril as he's been for 2 seasons now, and that he develops what they were calling his second sight, which is his ability to see into the upside down.
Oh, yeah.
And that he can control it. That would be cool, because that makes him more like Will the Wise, the character.
Yeah, so I hope he becomes like the 3rd of the 3.
Yeah, and the other question, which I think I've seen some people discuss online, is whether or not Hop and Dustin are in any kind of sort of danger like Will was, because they were both exposed to the flower that spit all that stuff in their face.
Yeah.
So it could be in the next season that they're like Will, like they become this sort of infected entity that they have to deal with in the show.
Will Hopper turned into Hellboy.
Which we're all excited to see. Okay, so I think we're going to have to go ahead and wrap up our discussion about Stranger Things Season 2. Remember, if you're enjoying the conversation and you like what you see and what you hear, please go on and subscribe to our YouTube page and support us on Patreon. Until next time, we've been R&D.
What would you grade it?
Oh, we're gonna get into grading. See, it's a given. They got an A, a solid A. I don't know what they could have done that would have been A plus. Like, I don't have any feedback for that, but there it is.
We both agree it's an A. Can't wait for Season 3, Season of the Upside Down.